Hello, this is Max. Today's story is about how a man's life began to crumble, leading him to reveal his true monster-like nature. You can subscribe to the channel after watching. It helps us a lot in realizing the content. The movie commences by introducing Ethan, a tutor employed by a private company catering to affluent families. He spends his days instructing wealthy children, and in the evenings, he enjoys quality time with his pregnant girlfriend, Annie. Ethan's job is financially rewarding. One day, he visits the tutor company's office and speaks with Daria, who informs him about an extraordinary opportunity. There is a highly esteemed client willing to pay him $2,500 daily to teach his child. However, there's a catch. Ethan must first undergo a trial by staying at the new student's home for a week. With limited information available, he is faced with a decision whether to accept this enticing offer when he returns home. Later, Ethan discusses the opportunity with Annie. Chris hesitates to be away for an entire week, while Annie reassures him that she can manage during his absence and encourages him to take the job. The following day, a driver arrives in a luxurious car to take Ethan to his new student's mansion, where he meets Jackson. Ethan asks what subjects Jackson needs help with, expressing his lack of information from the company. Jackson mentions his SAT scores and that his dad's assistant will provide additional details. During the practice test, Ethan notices the poor internet connection and explores the mansion. He stumbles upon Gavin and Jenny, Jackson's cousin and companion, respectively, and introduces himself. Ethan inquires about a landline to make a phone call due to the weak network. Afterward, Ethan is taken to his room for the night, where he calls Annie and excitedly shares details about the mansion, including the astonishing collection of vintage bikes. During his tutoring sessions, Ethan talks to Jackson about his music preferences and Gavin's presence. When Ethan asks about Jackson's father's profession, Jackson hesitates to disclose it. Curious about Jackson's mother, he discovers that she was taken away by unknown people. Jackson observes a camera in Ethan's hands and asks about his interest in photography, including photojournalism. Unexpectedly, Jackson learns of Ethan's impending paternity and tactlessly brings up the fact that their child will be considered illegitimate due to their unmarried status, causing Ethan to avoid discussing the matter further. Later that night, Ethan is in the courtyard, smoking a cigarette, when he notices Jackson observing him from the mansion's balcony. The following morning, he ventures into the forest to capture some photographs. In the forest, he unexpectedly encounters Gavin accompanied by his two girlfriends. Gavin offers Ethan a ride, and though he accepts, he senses that they are keeping something from him. Upon returning, Ethan resumes teaching Jackson, who surprises him by asking for a photograph. Though feeling uneasy about the request, Ethan eventually takes a picture of the boy. Later, just before starting his tutoring session with Jackson, Gavin appears and proposes to double Ethan's daily wage to $5,000 if he cancels the day's classes. That night, while having a call with Annie, Jackson unexpectedly enters Ethan's room and reveals that his mother has recently left them. Ethan is taken aback by Jackson's unusual behavior as the boy buries his head in Ethan's lap, crying and expressing his father's apparent lack of affection due to unmet expectations. In response, Ethan opens up about his own experiences, sharing that his father also disapproved of him, which is why he hasn't disclosed his impending fatherhood to him yet. Ethan admits feeling regretful for revealing such personal details to his student. The next day, Annie confides in her friend Miriam about her unhappiness with Ethan's absence. Miriam consoles her, suggesting that things will improve once they have their baby. Meanwhile, Jackson visits Ethan and insists he stays longer, proposing they have fun together. However, Ethan becomes angered and frustrated, firmly asserting that he is not Jackson's friend, merely there to do his job, and he will leave after completing his assigned tasks. Later that evening, Ethan realizes his mistake and feels remorseful for yelling at Jackson. He decides to apologize and goes to Jackson's room, but the boy is not there. While searching, Ethan finds Jackson's laptop and discovers private photos, some of which include intimate moments between them, including kissing. This revelation shocks Ethan deeply. The next day, During their study session, Ethan apologizes to Jackson and informs him that he has to leave because his girlfriend is alone and because Jackson's attachment to him seems excessive. However, Jackson defends his intentions, explaining that he only wanted to know Ethan better and insists there is nothing wrong with that. Ethan then confronts Jackson about the photos he found on the laptop, leading to an angry reaction from the boy. Jackson becomes upset, starts hitting himself, and storms off. In the aftermath of this intense encounter, Ethan unexpectedly comes across Jackson's father. Later, Jackson's father approaches Ethan and warns him that his son can be quite emotional, advising him to handle the situation with care. Despite completing the initial week, Ethan receives a surprising call from Chris, informing him that Jackson's father wants him to continue tutoring Jackson for the entire summer. The new offer includes triple the amount he was previously earning, leaving Ethan in disbelief. The next day, during dinner with his friends and Annie, they discuss their baby, and Annie reveals they are having a boy. Ethan shares his experiences with his new student, admitting that Jackson has become obsessed with him, following him everywhere, and giving the impression that he believes he can buy Ethan's attention. In a somewhat mocking tone, Ethan talks about Jackson's behavior, which shocks his friends, as Jackson's actions appear unsettling. To Ethan's surprise, Jackson suddenly appears during their conversation and reveals that his father is the building's owner. It becomes evident that Jackson overheard everything. On their way back home, Annie expresses disappointment in Ethan for ridiculing Jackson, and he promises to apologize to the boy the following morning. The following day, a luxurious car arrives to pick up Ethan, and he is driven to Jackson's townhouse. Upon arrival, he finds the house empty and calls Jackson, who instructs him to wait and make himself comfortable as they will join him later. While waiting, Ethan helps himself to some strawberries. However, after a few minutes, he suddenly loses consciousness. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself submerged in a lake, barely managing to survive and escape from the water. He eventually makes his way back home and recounts the harrowing experience to Annie. She speculates that it might have been a prank played by a mischievous kid on Ethan. During their conversation, Annie also asks about a woman who calls Ethan every day, which leads to an argument. Ethan admits he is seeking answers as well, but at the moment, he doesn't have any explanation for the strange events he encountered at Jackson's house. The next day, Ethan examines the pictures he took with his camera and is shocked to discover images of himself engaging in inappropriate activities with Gavin's girlfriend, Teddy. He has no recollection of these events and deduces that they must have occurred while he was unconscious from the drugged fruits he consumed at Jackson's house. Now living with Annie, they both apologize to each other for their previous argument. Ethan tries to contact Jackson but learns from the school that there is no student named Jackson enrolled there. Later, Chris calls to inform Ethan that Jackson no longer wants to study with him, claiming to be afraid of him and citing a foot injury. Ethan shares his suspicions with Chris about Jackson's emotional behavior, but Chris denies that Jackson's father knows anything about it, leaving Ethan perplexed about the identity of the person who posed as Jackson's father at the mansion. The following day, while Ethan is out searching for a new job, he encounters Jackson and Gavin. An argument ensues, resulting in Ethan pushing Jackson, who then threatens to ruin Ethan's life. The next day, an incident occurs, and Jackson is attacked, leading to Ethan's arrest. Despite trying to convince the detective that Jackson might be staging all this, Ethan faces skepticism. Upon returning home, Annie begins to doubt Ethan too and questions him about a woman named Rachel. Ethan claims not to know the name, but Annie reveals that Rachel was Jackson's mother and that she was murdered. She asks Ethan if he was involved, and he reveals that he used to date Rachel, but that she committed suicide. Realizing that Jackson may believe Ethan is responsible for his mother's death, Annie asks him to leave the house. Ethan heads back to the mansion, likely seeking answers and resolution to the unfolding events. The following day, Ethan encounters a stranger living in the mansion. When Teddy comes out, Ethan angrily accuses them all of trying to frame him. Determined to find evidence against Jackson, he visits Jackson's townhouse and discovers a drugged strawberry. He gets arrested, and the detectives inform him that the townhouse belonged to Jefferson, Rachel's husband, who passed away from cancer 3 years ago. The tutoring company fired Ethan because Jackson accused him of violence. Ethan calls Jackson, admitting defeat and pleading for him to stop following him. However, Jackson insists Ethan must see where he killed his mother. They go to the lake where Rachel's body was found. Jackson claims that his mother was pregnant and the child wasn't his father's. He urges Ethan to face the truth, and Gavin attacks Ethan from behind. In self-defense, Ethan kills Gavin and chases Jackson, who escapes outside and hides under the docks. Ethan confronts him, revealing this is where Rachel tried to hide too. Shocking revelations surface. Ethan is not human, but some kind of monster. As he is about to kill Jackson, Annie arrives and catches Ethan in the act. Ethan blames Jackson for everything, claiming he made him this way. In the midst of the confrontation, Jackson shoots Ethan, and he collapses. Later, the police conduct an extensive search for Ethan's body but are unable to locate it. In the final scene of the movie, we witness Ethan teaching another student, implying that he has somehow survived the events, leaving his fate open to interpretation. So, what do you think of this movie? Write your thoughts in the comments under the video, and also do not forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.